Hey everyone, welcome back to this week's lesson. Last week we talked about prayer and Jesus teaching on prayer. This week we're going to be teaching on Jesus and what he has to say about storing up treasure. You know, one of the cool things about Scripture is it touches on a number of different topics. And as we look at Luke chapter 12, we will see what Jesus has to say about where our treasure is, where our wealth is, where our hearts are. Before we get into our lesson today, I'm reminded of a story written a number of centuries ago by Charles Dickens, a story called A Christmas Story. If you remember in that book, there was a main character, Ebenezer Scrooge, and a number of side characters. And Ebenezer Scrooge, his whole mentality was he was a miser, a penny pincher, a hoarder. He wanted all of the money in the world and he wanted it all for himself. If you remember his associate, Bob Cratchit, who worked alongside him at his accounting firm, Bob Cratchit would try to add coal to the fire, and Ebenezer Scrooge would stop him. You could see Bob Cratchit's breath, and you could tell it was cold and frigid, just above freezing in his office. But Ebenezer Scrooge did all he could to make as much money as he could in the amount of time that he had on Earth, but he did it at the expense of other people. If you remember in that story, Ebenezer Scrooge went home Christmas Eve and was visited by three ghosts, the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future. In each of those episodes, Ebenezer Scrooge was transported to a different time and a different place in order to see his upbringing and his relationships at an early age. The ghost of Christmas present took him to the impoverished and homeless community in his current time, showed him all of the people who were destitute and in need. The ghost of Christmas future took Ebenezer Scrooge to his grave. It was a grave that was marked, but nobody went to visit because he was unloved, unliked, and unwelcome in his community. Ebenezer Scrooge was known as a penny pincher, and we know after those three ghosts visited him, he repented of his sin and gave money freely and was kind and generous. You see, he realized that life wasn't all about hoarding money. It was rather about caring for people and doing something with that money that was beneficial. Today we're going to take a look at Luke chapter 12 starting in verse 15, and we will see some neat truths. I want to highlight three of them today, so let's read together. Then he said to them, "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." He told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. And he thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, "You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you've prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God." You know, Jesus warns here that people need to be rich in God. The parable that Jesus told about the person who had more than enough, that person was only thinking about himself. He had more than enough and thought to himself, what am I going to do with all of this? I know. I'll tear down all of the stuff that I have now and build bigger things. And once I build bigger things, I'll be able to enjoy life and relax and not have to worry about anything. I can sit on the deck in the morning, drink coffee, and read the paper. I can go take a lunch in the afternoon, take a nap. I can not worry about anything going on in the world around me. I read the newspaper about all the death and destruction, all the homelessness and poverty and the people who need money. But I don't care. It's not a part of my world. That's not my problem. So I guess I'm just going to leave it alone. Right, that type of person is the person Jesus was talking about here. This idea of wealth that is pointless and purposeless to anybody outside of oneself. You know, it's fascinating in our culture today. We measure wealth by how much stuff we have, how many things we have, how much money we have in our 401k. You go apply for a home loan, they ask you your net worth. How much do you bring in? How much do you have in the bank? How much do you have in retirement? Oh, okay, well, we'll sign off on your loan then. Right? We measure things by what we have. Do I have a nice vehicle? Can I wear nice clothes? Can I put on nice cologne or perfume? Do I have a nice home with nice amenities inside? Do I have a hot tub or a master suite with a walk-in closet? Right? We measure wealth and we measure poverty by those standards. And that truth has been true from the time of Christ to the time of Charles Dickens to the time now. But Jesus has this pointed message. Don't worry about your material possessions, your personal wealth, your retirement. Worry about how rich you are in God. Let me give you an example. Matthew 26 tells us a story about the disciples going to Bethany, and there Jesus was anointed by a woman with an alabaster jar and expensive perfume. As she poured this perfume on Jesus' head and rubbed it into his hair, the disciples were aghast. They were horrified. Jesus, this perfume, we could have sold this perfume and given so much money to the poor. We could have given so much to the needy, to those who didn't have anything. And Jesus looked at them and said, don't rebuke this woman. What she has given, and she's done it to worship me. You see, the point is this. It's not about how much you have or how much you don't have. Those are worldly standards of measurement. But it's about what you do with what you have and what you do with what you don't have. In your wealth, do you use that to honor God? Are you giving to help people? Are you giving sacrificially to care for people? Are you giving to honor Jesus? Some of you are wealthy beyond compare, at least in the world standards. And you're thinking to yourself, I don't have any needs. I don't have to worry about my food, my car, my gas. I don't have to worry about any of it. But the question I would ask you, are you striving after more things? And are you generous with what you have so that God is honored? Because it's not about the world's measurement of wealth. It's about whether we're wealthy in God. It leads us to our second point today, and that is this, not to worry. We look at Luke chapter 12, starting in verse 22, and it says this, Then Jesus said to his disciples, Therefore I tell you, don't worry about your life and what you will eat, or about your body and what you will wear. For life is more than food, and the body more than clothes. Consider the ravens. They do not sow or reap. They have no storeroom or barn, yet God feeds them. And how much more valuable are you than birds? Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest? Consider how the flowers grow. They do not labor or spin. Yet I tell you, not even Solomon in all of his splendor was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and gone tomorrow, how much more will he clothe you, you of little faith? You see, those who are rich in God have very little to worry about. As we attempt to gain possessions, and as we do gain possessions, as we gain material wealth, as we get a house and have a retirement plan, we have insurance, and we have all of these things that we need to do to maintain that. It brings about worry in our lives. We care so much about our bodies and the way that they look with clothing and makeup and perfume, and we're always worrying about something else. Does this make me look fat? Right? Do I look okay with this makeup on? Hey, honey, do I smell okay? I just want to make sure we're going out tonight with some people. I want to make sure I smell okay. Right? And we have this checklist of all of the things we have to do in the morning to get ready. It takes me, an hour to shower and do my hair and get my clothes on and make sure that my teeth are brushed and I've got nothing in there. And then I go to work for 8 hours, and I work hard because I need to pay my insurance for my nice car, and I need to pay my payment on my nice car, and I need to save up for my retirement. and I put money toward my house because I have a mortgage. And not only that, but my house is a nice house, and I have a lot of nice things, so I have to put a lock on the door, and I pay for a security system. And I pay for internet to help support that security system. And I pay electricity and gas to help support my needs. It's this cycle of non-stop worry because we have so many things and so much care in the world. We have so many possessions, we have to store them and house them. I recently started to put a little bit of money into cryptocurrency. Now, I know that's probably not the smartest investment in the world. I just think it's a fascinating concept, right? And so I put some money in that. But the fascinating thing about cryptocurrency is it's not regulated by the SEC. It's not connected to your social security number or your identity at all. So somebody could steal that money. It's easy. You just have to have somebody's password, username, and you can go in and take it all. But what's funny about that then is the more you invest in something like cryptocurrency, the more you have to store a password. And you have to make a lengthy password that you might forget. And if you forget the password, you can't access the money that you've invested. So you make a lengthy password, you write the password down, and you store it in your house. Well, just in case your house burns down, you write your password down, store it somewhere else. And just in case something happens with that person and you can't access it, you write the password down and you store it another place. We create all of these fail-safes, which I guess are necessary, but you create all of these fail-safes that just create more worry. Right? We go to the doctor and we find out that there are things wrong with us. So we have to start taking medication and exercising. And we have to go back to the doctor every few months to get our blood work done. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. But do you realize, as I'm talking, how much worry can build up over those things? There's a point in our lives where we have to realize that God is ultimately in control. Let me give you a couple of quick tips to help you with worry. Number one is to be in community with other people. It's important that we're in community, that we're in relationships with others who can help us, support us, encourage us, and pray for us. I think a second thing is it's important for us to realize that the things that we have are not ours. They're God's. You see, the Christian worldview teaches us that the things that we have, God has given to us. There's a key word, I think, that we need to put in our library, our dictionary, and hold on to it. Stewardship. God has entrusted us with things to be good stewards. The money that you have, you've earned it, but God has given it to you. Right? The children that you have, sure, they're your children, you may have adopted, or maybe you've created them yourself. But ultimately, God has given them to you. The home that you have, God has given that to you. The friends that you have, God has given them to you. All of the things that you have are things that God has given to you to steward. If we begin to flip the script in our mind, that the things that we have aren't things that we've earned, gained, or control, we recognize rather that God has given them to us and we are stewards of those things. It may help us not worry as much because ultimately they're His. And so when my children are sick, I care for them, I take them to the doctor, I get them all of the shots and the vitamins that they need, but they're in God's hands. They're His children. My car, we bought a new car, and within a couple of weeks, one of the trim pieces popped off, and it's gone. I have to get a new one. But you know what? God gave us that car. We paid for it, no doubt, but God gave it to us. And the more I stress about it, the more it's me taking control of it, and it's not really mine to take control of. I just need to take care of it the best that I can. So I think those are some important things, being in community and stewarding what God has given to us. And I think a final thing here, and this is something Jesus highlights, is this, focusing on the kingdom of God. Do not set your heart on what you will eat or drink. Do not worry about it, for the pagan world runs after such things. And the Father knows that you need them. But seek His kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. Seek first God's kingdom. It's interesting that our 2 or 3 stories here bookend with this idea of being rich in God and seeking God's kingdom first. The third thing that's so very important, not only being in community and being good stewards, but seeking God first. I would encourage you when you get up in the morning to spend time in the Lord praying. Spend time with the Lord reading His Word. Spend time with Him and talk with Him and give all of the things that you have back to Him. Say, God, I recognize that today is a day that you've given me. It's a day that you've made. Today, my children, you've given them to me, and I thank you. My house, you've given it to me. My job, you've given it to me, and I thank you. But I'm giving them back to you because they're yours. And I am going to steward them the best that I am able. But ultimately, I'm a sinner, and I fail. So God, you are going to have to take these things and use them for your glory. Use me as I work in them. That is the heart of a person who doesn't worry. It's the person who doesn't worry. I get it. Worry's going to happen. But I would encourage you to do those things. Make God rich in your life. Don't worry about your material possessions. Second, trust the provision that God has. He is the one who ultimately provides. And third, seek God's kingdom first. In your groups today, spend time talking with each other about these things. Talk about what is it that you worry about? What is it you're afraid of? What is it you hold so tightly that like glue, it just starts leaking out your fingers? Pray in your group. Encourage each other in your group. And help hold each other accountable that ultimately everything is about God and His glory, not about us and our possessions.